The retirees who pay the least in taxes aren't spending the least. They just know which accounts to take their money from. And getting this wrong could cost you $16,000 per year, like it was with my clients Jim and Beth. So in this video, I'm going to show you the hidden cost that was draining Jim and Beth's retirement. The 3 mistakes making them pay $16,000 more to the government than they needed to every year, and exactly what we did instead so they could spend more now while paying less in taxes. To start, I need to show you the stealth tax that Jim and Beth discovered was costing them thousands per year. So when they signed up for Medicare, they were expecting their healthcare costs to drop, because for most people, Medicare is a lot cheaper than what they were paying for private insurance through their employer. But when it was time to pay their first premium, they had sticker shock, because what nobody had told them was that Medicare doesn't cost the same for everyone. Your premiums are based on your income, and the more you make, the more you pay. So because Jim was still working and making good money, they were paying thousands more than someone with lower income for the exact same coverage. And at first, they thought the problem would solve itself when Jim retired. But the money you take out of pre-tax accounts counts towards your income the same way a paycheck does. And once you turn 73, the government starts forcing you to take money out of those accounts every year. They're called required minimum distributions, or RMDs. And with $2 million sitting in pre-tax accounts, these forced withdrawals could be large enough to push them right back into those higher Medicare costs even after Jim stopped working. Now, Jim had done his research and came up with what looked like a smart strategy. But without realizing it, they were about to make 3 mistakes that would hand the government $16,000 a year that they didn't need to. So let me show you what those 3 mistakes are and what they can do instead to spend more money while paying less in taxes. So this shows Jim and Beth's income relative to the level that increases their Medicare premiums. For as long as Jim works, they'd be stuck paying those higher costs. And later in retirement, required minimum distributions would eventually push their income back above this level. And this is where Jim thought he had the perfect strategy to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. While he was working, there was no way they'd be able to avoid higher Medicare costs. But later on, they could. So if they took money out of Jim's 401k now, that would mean less money in retirement accounts. Smaller accounts mean smaller RMDs, and smaller RMDs means being able to avoid those higher Medicare costs later. But what he didn't realize was that withdrawal was about to hand the IRS an extra $3,000 that they didn't need to pay. So when Jim looked at Medicare costs, he looked at them like a fence. You're either on the regular cost side or you're on the higher cost side, like there was no in between. But Medicare doesn't work like that. It works like a staircase. Every time your income climbs another step, your Medicare premiums climb with it. And each step can add more than $1,000 per person every year. So when we go back to the Medicare page, there isn't just one threshold. There's several. And if they took a withdrawal from Jim's 401k, it would push them up another step and add close to $3,000 to their Medicare premiums. And learning this caught them completely off guard. But still, they didn't feel like they had an answer for the problem. If they didn't take money from his 401k, the only other option was their joint account. And their joint account was full of stocks that they had bought decades ago. So that means that if they sold them, there would be a huge capital gain. And they would still cross another Medicare level just from a different source of income. So they felt like they had no choice but to either pay extra to the government or not be able to spend their own money. But what they didn't realize is that they had another source of income hidden in their joint account that they never even considered. So a couple of their biggest holdings paid a nice dividend every year. And because they never needed the cash, they had set up everything to automatically reinvest. But the thing is, those dividends count as income whether they reinvest them or not. So instead of reinvesting those dividends, why not take them as cash and use that as their spending money instead? They're going to count as income either way. So they can take that money out and spend it instead of reinvesting it. And it doesn't increase their income any higher than what it already was. So the first mistake was ignoring the income from their investments that they already had access to. This can give you extra spending money without triggering higher taxes or higher Medicare premiums. Now, the second mistake comes from that same fear about what's waiting for them down the road. Because if RMDs could push them into higher Medicare costs later, they needed to do something to prevent it. And to Jim, the solution seemed obvious. every extra dollar he saved into his 401k meant a bigger balance in bigger RMDs. So why not just stop adding to the 401k? And that does seem like a good way to get ahead of the problem. But when we ran the numbers, it turned out he was solving the wrong problem entirely. So this shows Jim and Beth's tax bracket over time. Right now, they're well into the 24% bracket. And even when we add in Jim contributing the max to his 401k, they still stay in the same bracket. So at first glance, it doesn't seem like it's costing him anything by not contributing. But contributing to your 401k doesn't just affect your tax bracket. When we switch this to their Medicare bracket, the deduction they'd get from Jim maxing his 401k would be enough to drop them underneath the second Medicare level, which would save them over $3,000. But as soon as Jim saw this, he had an objection. He said, yeah, that'd be great to save that money today. But if we put more money into our retirement accounts, won't we just give those savings back later once RMDs kick in? Well, when we look at their income over time, adding more money to retirement accounts does mean bigger RMDs and risking giving that money back. But here's the part about this that most retirement planning software completely misses. It assumes you'll only pull out what you need to cover expenses. So in Jim and Beth's case, once you factor in Social Security, they only need $50,000 from their portfolio. They don't have a mortgage, their kids are independent, and they just don't need that much to cover their lifestyle. But the thing is, they want to spend their money, not let it sit in their accounts. And with over $2 million saved, they can spend a lot more than $50,000 every year and still not have to worry about running out of money. So instead, let's switch this so they take out an extra $100,000 per year, all from their retirement accounts. Pulling all that money out of their retirement accounts aggressively reduces the balances. And now, those future distributions are much smaller than Jim projected, and they won't push them into higher Medicare costs at all. So adding more to their retirement accounts now doesn't automatically mean they'll have an RMD problem later, especially if they plan to spend aggressively once they stop working. And when they give up tax savings today to try and protect themselves later on, they're solving for the wrong problem. Now, the third mistake is the one that surprised Jim the most, because he thought he'd figured out the Social Security piece. And if you want to give the least amount of your money to the government as possible, you need to know about this one, even if you're not eligible yet, because it was costing Jim and Beth over $10,000 every year. So Jim and Beth had hit full retirement age for Social Security, but Jim decided to delay for two good reasons. First, he knew he would lose a bigger chunk of his benefit to taxes if he started collecting while he was working. And every extra year he delayed, the more his benefit would grow. So instead of getting a benefit of $3,800 at full retirement age, he'd get close to $4,800 if he waited until 70. In the meantime, Beth started collecting her benefit to give them some extra income. But because she had spent most of her working years staying home with the kids, her benefit was only about $1,000 a month. And this might seem like a reasonable claiming strategy, but it was quietly costing them close to $10,000 per year in free money. So the government offers what are called spousal Social Security benefits, and this lets a spouse collect the higher of their own benefit or half of their partner's. So for Beth, her own benefit is $1,000 a month, which is a lot less than half of Jim's, which is $1,900 a month. But here's the part about spousal benefits most people don't realize. You can't collect spousal benefits until your spouse starts claiming their benefit. So every year Jim delays, Beth can't get access to that higher spousal benefit. So they're basically turning down a free $10,000 every year. So before you delay claiming to try and avoid taxes, make sure you factor in spousal benefits so you don't accidentally miss out on thousands each year. So between those three mistakes, Jim and Beth were handing the government $16,000 that could have stayed in their pocket, $6,000 in extra Medicare premiums, and $10,000 in extra Social Security benefits. But the thing is, most people in Jim and Beth's situation have no idea these mistakes exist until they've already been made and that money is gone. So if you want to make sure you're not handing more of your money to the IRS than you need to, click the link below to book a call with me. We'll go through your plan the same way we did with Jim and Beth and make sure your money is going to the retirement you saved for instead of to the government. And if you want to learn more about how to pay less taxes in retirement, You can watch this video next, where I break down exactly what to do at each stage of retirement to keep more of your money.